He who shall have the final say in every decision, no matter how insignificant or petty it may seem to others. He who will hear the prayers of all. He who has been blessed by the gods and will have dominion over the lands of the living, the dead, and the unborn. I know you've probably never even heard of this guy before, but he's pretty fucking important. He's a real-life superhero, and he's my cousin. His name is Perseus, and I'm his best friend. He's a good dude, you know? He doesn't have a mean bone in his body, but he's also not afraid to step in when he needs to. We're kind of like Robin Hood and Little John. He steals from the rich and gives to the poor. I break noses and crack skulls. It's kind of our thing. We live in a small little village outside the city walls of Argos, home of Hades. My parents are simple farmers who just want to be left alone. My father has a big heart, but his mind is easily distracted. He's kind and funny, but his eyes are always looking for the next adventure. He wants me to go find one too. I'm 17 years old now, and I've got about as much clue about the next step in life as I do about the stars in the sky. But I'm good at working shit out for myself, and I can always count on Perseus to lend a helping hand. He's my guide, my mentor, my best friend. So anyway, we were sitting out in the garden, me with my face buried in the dirt, Perseus at my side, when he suddenly looked up at the sky. Perseus! I said, what the hell are you doing? I looked up and saw a flash of light in the sky. Perseus! What was that? He turned his head back towards me and grinned. That was a shooting star. What the hell do you think shooting stars are? They're gods, or something like gods, he said. They fall from the sky when they're unhappy with what they have become. What do you mean what they have become? I mean like a bad guy god. He paused and thought a moment. A bad guy god who gets sent to Tartarus to pay for his crimes. I frowned at him. Tartarus. Who talks like that? The ancient Greeks. I looked at him skeptically. And how many people do you think talk like that? He shrugged. A lot. How many people are there in Greece? He thought about that for a moment. Maybe 10 million? Maybe less. I roll my eyes at him. That's not what I meant. How many people do you think actually talk like that? He thought about that for a while and then shook his head. Maybe 2,000? Maybe less? I stared at him. How is that possible? Where did you even learn about this shit? He smiled. It's a long story. Okay, I said. So, where did you hear about this? He looked up at the sky again. There was a teacher named Dictys who came down from Olympus and taught my father about ancient Greek myths. He taught me a lot of stuff too. He taught me about the gods, how they fall from the sky like shooting stars when they are unhappy with what they become. And when they get sent to Tartarus. That makes no sense. Tartarus is a mythical place. There's no such thing as a real Tartarus. Why would gods be sent to a fictional place? He shrugged again. I guess because it's more believable than a real place. I laughed at that. Believable? Believable how? If these gods are so unhappy with what they've become, why would they want to go back? Why not just leave if you don't like it? He thought about that for a long moment and then smiled. I guess because they want to see what happens. So they just want to see how their story turns out. Maybe that's why they fall from the sky like shooting stars. I shook my head. That sounds kinda dumb to me. It's not dumb. I shrugged and started to pull another weed out of the ground. I'm not saying it's dumb. I know. I looked up at him again. But you don't have to be so condescending about it. He sighed and looked up at the sky again. Sorry. I didn't mean to be condescending. I just don't understand why people like you have such a problem with this. I took a breath and closed my eyes. I guess because I think people shouldn't be happy about anything. They should be sad for everything they've done. They should be angry about what they've become. They should be frustrated for being sent to Tartarus when they don't want to be there. He sat there and thought about what I said for a long time, and then he looked at me with those intense brown eyes of his and asked, would you rather be sad and angry and frustrated all the time? I sat there thinking about it for a while and then I shook my head. No, I wouldn't. He nodded. Me either. I stared at him for a long moment and then looked back at the ground and said, so what does that make us then? He thought about that for a long time and then he said, people who like stories. I laughed at that. That's a stupid answer. I know, he said, but that's what we are. We're the kind of people who like stories. Stories aren't real. I know that too. So why are we friends then? He thought about that for a moment, and then he said, I guess because we have each other. I stared at him for a moment, and then I said, and because we're family. He smiled. Yeah, that too. So that means we have to stick together no matter what. He nodded. Yes. We don't have to be sad for anything. We can laugh about it. I agree. And we can celebrate things that we're proud of. Sure. So tell me more about these stories of yours? He smiled at me. I will tell you all about them, but first you have to tell me what happened to you last night. I thought about that for a moment and then I said, I had a dream last night. He tilted his head to the side. What kind of dream? Well, I had this dream about my mom. He furrowed his brow. Your mom is dead. I know. Then why are you talking to her in your dream? I'm not talking to her in a dream, I said. I'm talking to her in my head. He laughed at that and then said, So what was the dream about then? I frowned and said, Well, my mom and I were walking through the woods on our way back to the house, and I felt like someone was following us. It was like a dark presence was looking around us, and we could hear breathing behind us. Who's following you? I don't know, I said. It wasn't clear. All I saw were shadows and black smoke. What did you do? I looked up at him and smiled. Well, I told her to run away and hide. Then she told me it was okay and that she would be okay, and she just vanished into thin air. I laughed and said she disappeared like she was just a ghost. But she wasn't a ghost. She was my mother. You saw her die? I shook my head and said, No, she died before I was born. This was just a memory of her. He looked at me skeptically. What if it really was your mom following you? What if she really was just a ghost? I guess it's possible, I said, but I don't think so. I looked up at him again. I don't think she would want me to be afraid of her like that. He smiled at me and said, So what did you do next? I looked back down at my hands as I said. Then we started to run, and I realized there was a tree in our way. What happened then? I smiled and said, Well, I picked it up and threw it at the thing following us, and it just vanished. He stared at me with his mouth open as he said, You what? You picked up a tree and threw it at it? I nodded as I said, Yeah, that's what I did. Why would you do that? I shrugged. It seemed like the right thing to do. He furrowed his brow as he said, But you could have been hurt. But I wasn't, I said. And then my mom told me it was okay and she disappeared again. He shook his head in disbelief and said, You are unbelievable. What's so unbelievable about any of this? I asked. A man who is supposed to have died years before you were born tells you it's okay to fight the bad guy by throwing trees at him. He laughed out loud and then he said, And she just disappeared? Just like that? He paused and furrowed his brow as he asked again, What was she like? I smiled at him as I said, She was a warrior princess from ancient Greece. Ancient Greece? You mean like Greece back on Earth? I nodded as I said, That's right, Perseus. We're from ancient Greece. Well, he said as he got up off the rock and brushed the dirt off of his jeans, I guess that's the last of my questions. Shall we go back to the house? I nodded. Yes, let's.